And so thank you all. And the stuff I've got up here is coming from off your farms. Some of the advisors have been involved, but the people here have helped put it together. So, many thanks to you all. So I'm just going to talk about sort of the hygiene and the ventilation, but actually the ventilation is the hygiene of the air. We've done a lot of work in the past on respiratory diseases, and basically, the hygiene of the air is part of the deal, and we need to play with it. We understand a lot about the physics and the biology of going on in here. We talk about ventilation, but really we're talking about fresh air delivery into our systems. So away we go. We're just going to dump straight in. Now, hopefully all of you have seen this, because mid-June, the output from this project from the people here in AFBI was a report for every farm, and it went out. And I quite like this sort of traffic-like approach. So just looking at, we're almost there. Calf and birth management. So just on hygiene alone, I think there always has been issues that I think what I like about this area, it's something that you can do something about. It's very practical work can come out of this, So if we look at calving bed frequency, on this particular farm, we've got every cow, there's some bedding chucked in. But over on the right-hand side here, we've got over the farms involved. Most of you in this room, we can see that actually, more or less 2/3 of people are in the good zone. You'll be bedding up after every calving, but we can see over here we've got 1/3 with maybe some way to go. Now the point about it, from the point, if you're in the bad zone, the point is that this is not academia. The reality is there's plenty of people doing a good job, right? So it can be done. I think I know why to me what's interesting is, why are these issues over here? So the calving pen cleaned out frequently, if we can wash a mat, within 30 minutes of calving, do you think as a population that we'll maybe be able to provide a higher level of hygiene for an animal arriving into the world with a pretty poor immune system? And the answer has to be yes. So the question is, well, there's two questions. One, is it worth it? And number two, if it's worth it, how do we do it? Because we'll just have a look at one or two pictures, but the reality is I think that some of the facilities we have and the amount of time and labor we have available, we make this job virtually impossible. So what happens in terms of biology, that you only clean out a calving pen every 5 or 6 weeks. We're the same. But then you go, if I have a calving pen that's big enough for 15 cows, and we're short of space, funny enough, you'll get cows which keep calving pens, which have animals in that shouldn't really be in there in the first place. So it's more of a systems design and system management role. So this is an area, there's virtually no work done in the world on the value of keeping calving pens clean, and I think that we can start right here, because we've got issues. You're talking about the difficulty or the reality of having your colostrum that you need to use, and it doesn't quite make the grade. Well, as been pointed out twice already, we make the other things work as best we can. Coming down the list, the hygiene in the calving pen, rank poor. We're starting to slip a bit here. And for me, I'm pretty confident it's not because we don't want it to be good. It's the fact that reality of the matter is it's pretty difficult to get there. And part of the project we're looking at how is to share good practice and say, how can we actually make this work for you? Colostrum are not going, quite interesting for me. Proud to be involved in getting calf jackets onto farms. But the comment I would always make to veterinarians is don't recommend calf jackets to farmers if you don't think they're going to wash them between calves. That to me is one step forward and two steps back. So the calving pen environment, we have data that's sort of looking at the bacterial load on there. And for me as a non-vet, it's very interesting for me too, is that we spend a lot of time being interested in the pathogen. Is Mycoplasma bovis present? Have we got cryptosporidium? Oh my God. You need to understand that actually there's a whole load of other bugs present anyway, some of them good, some of them bad. And if you have a very high load of these, what we call commensal bacteria, and somehow they go up the jacksie or in the ear or in the mouth or up the nose, then they represent a burden to the biological system of the calf. Oh, that's the same calf that's got an immune system that it's learning how to develop in terms of its interaction with the environment. And an excellent work coming out of Australia, it says the growth rates of piglets exposed to general bacteria in the environment, not a single pathogen present, compared with the growth rate of piglets exposed to a clean environment, is 11% different. Let's make that 10% to make it remember. So the amount of bugs in the environment absorbs the sufficient sort of dynamics of the animal to make it slow down growing. I think a calving pen is an area where we can start here. And I realize the infrastructures may be a bit old, but one place I would go is to make calving pens smaller so that they're easier to access. You know, this kind of thing here, but obviously access is an issue. And so that actually for me is going to be part of the solution. If we want to get around this problem, maybe we need to step back and address how we do the job slightly differently. Calf house hygiene. How are calf pens cleaned out? And here we go. We've got the range of answers again. And what we're talking about here, and again, for me, the issue, the question I would tend to ask is, you know, do you as a population want to clean calf pens out? And the answer is probably going to be yes. But I could ask you another question and ask you, are your calf pens easy to clean? These are two different things, yeah? We can do this. Are we allowed to do this? Right? Most of you in here farmers, right? So stick your hand in the air if you reckon that your calf pens are easy to clean. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we've got some up, some down. I could tell stories about you lot for these two. No, they've all put their hands up, which would be a lie. Okay, some up, some down. Now, those of you that put your hands up, what I have to say is that actually I'm a bit of a professional bastard. So I'm going to come round to your farm, and after you've cleaned it, I'm going to bring some swabs with me, right? Is your hand going to stay up? Because actually, for me, what I see is facilities that are actually difficult to clean, okay? And so another outcome from this project, I think, is actually to address some of that, because there's simple things that if once you've washed it out, and somebody meant cryptosporidium, if once you've washed something out, that you go back in and you rub your nail along any surface at animal level and you get a bit of brown sludge comes off, those are fats, kind of things that are being put in, that disinfectants don't touch them. So you buy the disinfectant, you do the work, and actually the pathogens can be inside there. Cryptosporidium can be inside there. Mycoplasma survives in there. So you do the washing process, but you don't get the full benefit. So I think there's a whole area there on, I think the cleanability of what you have out there is an issue. And it's basically an issue where you talk about don't have time and money to do stuff. Well, if you spend time washing and it doesn't really work that well, then that's lost time, okay? So I think there's a number of things here about pens being easy to clean, and we're saying, trying to be as objective as possible, that there's more than half of them are not easy to clean. And then we wonder why we have scour as a problem in the first 4 weeks of life. So on to other things. Drainage. Does drainage work? For me, a very easy one. If a floor doesn't work today, it is never, ever, 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 ever going to work until you change it. It's called gravity. Okay, and if it comes and seeps out the front of the pen, and then you walk through it on your way to feed the other calves, here we go, get that microphone going across we do, we come over to this microphone. This is very simple, and I see it all the time. So if you're spending time cleaning stuff and money on the cleaning products, but you're walking through the sharn all the time, as we would call it, then that is always going to continue until you sort the drainage out. Might not be a very nice thing for me to tell you, but in fact, it's the reality. And so you amongst there, the question is, so what do we do next? So we come to that in a minute, okay? Another question for you all. Great to see you here. Right, stick your hand in the air if you spend 5 days a week on the feeding of calves. 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay. A good scratch. We're talking, 40% of you, which means that 60% of people on your farms, of your farms, the people are not here. And as somebody who works in pigs and poultry as well, I think this is, we've heard why it's critical, but I actually think this is another area where we need to make your job easier. If we want people to do things better or more hygienically, or get the correct amount of powder into the bucket, we need to make the job easier. And I sort of, for me, in the job, I've designed one already. Okay, don't tell Stephen, but we need what I call the calf kitchen. If it's easy to provide at 6:30 in the morning, the right quality of water at the right time, and to have something there on a shelf and whatever else, let's go for it. It's going to pay for itself in terms of an investment very, very quickly. I think the cleaning process, we have data from this project here, it's great, but the number of samples which are over, basically the limit of 300,000, over 300,000 CFUs per mil, we don't bother counting anymore. We just go, it's dirty. And of course, it's pretty simple, isn't it? Milk goes off pretty quick. So unless we clean a bucket pretty quick or clean it properly pretty quick, there's going to be plenty of bacteria about the place. And I sort of think this is an area for investment. Remember, UK, Ireland, actually most of Europe, scour is the #1 problem in the first few weeks of life. And I just say to you guys, you're the people that do it. Do you think there's a relationship between the hygiene levels on our farms and scours? I'm not a sophisticated person. I think the answer is to invest in making the job easier, and I have to say, I would like to get hold of the person that designed that and give him a good kicking, because actually, if you have facilities that are difficult to clean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? But I do think we have a dialogue to have. So here's another one. We'll try this one here. I've been doing this for a couple of years because the hygiene thing's been bugging me, right? And I'm going, right, here's the question. I'll ask the vets, and they give me the answer. I go, okay, so I'll ask the farmers. Stick your hand in the air if you have a discussion with your veterinarian before you buy disinfectant. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. We've got one person in the room, right? Now, there you go. I asked the same question of the veterinary profession because I'm concerned about hygiene levels. I say, you lot, you're a profession. You should be sorting this out. Do you have a dialogue with farmers and have a discussion? Do we have this right 25-litre container? That's a 5-litre container. Are we buying and using the right stuff? And believe it, this isn't just here. Don't worry. It's the same where I come from. There is actually not much of a dialogue. And that's the first bit. The second bit is you slosh it into the bucket because you can measure 125 mil accurately by doing that, number one. And number two is actually, I've got a new expression. We've got calf kitchen. We're into that. We need calf kitchen. The other one, we need to clean before disinfectant. And by clean, that means a removal of organic matter, because the great Professor Jill Thompson, she is wonderful, over in Scotland there, working there, so you see. She did some work 10 years ago. And if you leave a bit of dirt lying around and then add the disinfectant, a pile of disinfectants with DEFRA certification are no longer valid at the concentrations they recommend. Yeah? What are your advisors seeing? So again, it's another one of these things we maybe be, if you have a problem getting rid of cocci or cryptosporidium or something, one of the things to ask ourselves is, are we doing the right protocol to get rid of the specific bugs on my farm? And this is not, this is a cup of tea and a biscuit job, this is. This is not a lot of running around. We just need to start asking the questions. But don't bother. Well, I say don't bother, but if you're chucking disinfectant down, we don't have enough time. So So if we don't have enough time, are you telling me you don't have enough time and therefore we don't do it properly? Well, that's a system failure, isn't it? So you need to be nicer to yourself, quite honestly. Make the job more likely to be successful from the beginning, because otherwise you're pushing shit uphill. That's how it works. So I'm saying, again, as an industry, we don't like them, but have a standard way of doing it. And then if you've got a hangover or just lost the rugby or the hurling or whatever, you don't have to think about it. Just do it. It's that much and that much and that much and just go. But don't pretend you can wash something out if you don't have enough time for the chemical to lie there for the specified amount of time before you wash it out again and then dry it off. If you're time pressured like that, you again have to stand back from the system and at least say, well, maybe once a year, I'm going to deep clean this building. I'll put them outside the calves. They're not going to melt. But it's an area where I think there's a lot of potential in the way we prepare the food, present the food, and transfer a pen that's been inhabited for 6 to 8 weeks to a young calf. Great potential here to help it out. So yeah, I'm just saying it's quite simple. You need to get rid of the organic matter, soak it up, wash it out, let it dry. Do remember where all the dirty water goes, because if it goes into the adjacent pen or using power washers in a building that's got loads of calves in it, we need to examine that stuff. We'll know from work done in Aberdeen, you're looking at the spread of aerosols. The stuff's on the floor. It doesn't really hurt the animal in the adjacent pen, but you start doing power washing here, you create aerosols. We can track stuff 30 meters away in terms of biology. We need to be just a little bit thoughtful here. And I think at times we need to make space. If space is your issue, then nothing, even a brand new building, cannot keep performing at a constant high level, and if it doesn't get a deep clean frequently. Again, we learn this, and you sort of go, well, I don't have enough space. Put them outside in May. Plan it. We were talking about planning before. Make a plan and get the animals in a simple situation. They're not, as I said, they're not going to melt. Take it a couple of days. Make stuff easy to clean. Render the walls. Yeah, we slowly make the job so that when you do spend the time and the money, it has a higher efficacy. It's going to work. Yeah, blue. You can paint it green if you like. I'm not worried. Tartan, I don't mind. It's making the job effective in time. And the other thing is, will you ever have more labour on your farms? I don't think we will. So I think this is an area whereby, from our point of view, we have to recognize the limitations are not your desire to do the job properly. The limitations are the resources we have at hand, and time's one of them. So one way to help that, do the job, make the job more simple. Floors, as I said before, if they don't work now, they're never going to work. But if you spend £1,000 to sort a floor out and get drains in the right place, £1,000, oh my God. Speak to people that know about the money, speak to the advisors and work out if you spend that £1,000, are you going to make that money back? There's no point spending money unless you get money back. Just a little one here about water and dryness, because that to me is a target of calf housing. I'm going to nip on briefly onto ventilation because, animals are damp things. Funny that, especially if you squeeze them hard. We're putting water in, there's breath coming out, there's urine going on the floor, and you live in a damp climate. Hey ho, this is hard work. We know that. But one of the issues that doesn't come down the route of the veterinary profession is the idea that actually the environment also has a massive impact in the survival rates of the pathogens that are causing us problems. So it's not pathogen animal, right? It's to do with the environment pathogen animal. And this is just a very quick one here. So Cryptosporidium. One of the reasons you struggle to get rid of Cryptosporidium is you don't understand, or we don't understand at the point of the farm, that really why it's hard to get rid of. It loves surviving in water. So it's infection for 6 months in water, between 5 and 15 degrees centigrade. What is the average temperature in Northern Ireland, right? Whereas below 5 and above 15, actually, its survival rate is reduced. So they will have less of a problem with cryptosporidium in Norway and Sweden. This is just the way it works. Your climate is difficult. Okay? Non-infectious, well, basically, you'll get rid of it over 60 degrees centigrade if it's exposed to that for 5 minutes. So if you have a cryptosporidium problem, that means that power washing will not touch it at all. You need to steam clean it. Again, that's work that's been known and understand, and that's the message that needs to go out there to the producers, how to do it. If you can't get rid of it, look at the system you're using. And it survives freezing for a week, but drying, my point is, dryness is our target really for calf rearing, because a lot of the commensal bacteria and some of the other pathogens like cryptosporidium, they don't survive well in dryness. The target is how to do that in a damp climate. So the conclusions really, we need to consider what disinfectant will be used, some fancy names there, and products. This is work done by Becky Gosling at APHA. Products are rarely effective at less than the recommended dilution. So accuracy is a good idea. Now, we'll finish off briefly on the calf housing design. And you go, well, actually, this is what we want. Well, we're going, hang on, mate. This is what we're going to be producing as part of the deal. But I'm just going to talk about ventilation. Right? Just the ventilation bit. There's a tremendous range in here of buildings, and you've all seen different ways of doing it. The point is making an assessment of all these different designs to see what is maybe relevant at all and what can be improved. And for some, I'll sort of go, well, I'd be quite happy to start with that one for sure. It's got a nice peak on the roof. It just needs to be opened up a bit, and it's not voluminous. It's not a large volume building. What we found, actually, and I'm only going to talk about ventilation very rapidly, it's quite simple. Ventilation is predominantly created by the wind. And so every location you are, I can do it sitting on the other side of the world. I just go, where are you? Have a look, and you find a windrose. So this windrose is a thing that basically wind is ventilating our building 90% of the time. And this north, south, east, west, this shows from all the grove on basically 8 years of data, the frequency of the wind coming from different directions and the speed it comes at. So like for most of you, we know that a huge amount of wind is going to come from this area. It's going to come from the east, 10% of the time, and it's going to come late winter. So it's coming from the east and it's going to be cold. So when you look at the building, you actually have an element of predictability of how well it's going to be ventilated by the wind. And one of the things that a lot of you do with older buildings, we're the same, is that this side of the building is frequently solid with green tin. It's great stuff. And it's been there for decades, because if it's old stuff, it's well made. And the point about that is, as soon as you put up a solid wall, right? As soon as you put up a solid wall, you're saying, I don't want free fresh air coming in through there for 60% of times a year. So the cladding on the side of the buildings becomes very important. And that's going to be part of the output of the project, is to talk about there's different ways of getting air safely in and out of the building. And some of them are better than others. So the buildings that we've looked at here have all been classified on the basis of how much inlet area they have. One of the things you need over here in Ireland is, this is basically, it doesn't show very well, is Yorkshire boarding, which is 2 lines of boards with small gaps between them. And if it's for calf housing, just make the gap an inch. I want the fresh air, I don't want the rain, and I don't want the wind. But solid doesn't work. That just increases the relative humidity inside a wall. And of course, the wind comes from all directions at some point. And also, I think for those old buildings, those small, you maybe just got sort of a bunch of 10 calves in an old Victorian building, get the louvers in. Okay, they're not very flexible, but you can make them themselves. This is an amazing structure came across where this is how you make hay in one of the wettest areas in Britain. You know, the hay goes into a building and basically all the time it's windy, you know, yes, there's a certain amount of dampness get in there, but you all know that if there's a bit of wind movement on a concrete floor or floor outside, it dries up pretty quick. You need outlets in the roof. No outlet in the roof, then the only way for the dirty air is to get out through that door there. It's not a very good of doing the thing. And so the designs of what you have here is important. This is common, and we're after, I've just come up from Ireland as well, we're after stopping that as a design. We need CAFRE to get out there and say, look, you've understood you need a hole in the roof, but don't make it like that, okay? Because basically all the time that the wind's blowing, which is 90% of the year, the wind is going to blow in the top of that building, right? Whereas with a subtle difference in design, an upstands, it's called an upstand, then as the wind blows for 90% of the time, it floats over the top there, it creates a negative pressure in the hole and it will suck the air out. And I know it works because when I get people doing it, or I see people doing it, they actually see the building dry up on the inside purely by putting in upstands on a ridge. So no to that, and if that's what you've got, then you need to create an upstand to protect the hole and not force the air in. So it's predictable though that the wind doesn't blow. It's more weather data. Sorry, I'm going over time here. So but the point is, it's absolutely predictable that we have calm weather. It's related also to an increased frequency in the outbreak of pneumonia cases. Yeah, and also, of course, if your calf house has a solid wall or is beside the silage pit and the wind can't get it, it won't get ventilation. The solution is actually really simple. You need a fan and a duct. Because unlike bigger cattle, ruminants that produce a lot of energy as body heat that heats the air and drives the air up through the roof, the stack effect, you don't produce enough heat from calf houses, especially if they're sort of made out of concrete, steel and stone. The point is, it's actually quite simple. It's going to cost you 1,200 quid and £1 a day to run, to put a fan and a duct in, and that gives you a guaranteed supply of fresh air. So just rattle through that, that's very good. But basically, I think the thing about hygiene is if we step back and reappraise it, we're in a position to make better use of time and money, which we're short of most of the time.